East Haven, come down Jefferson Road. This is the site. That's the full site. It's
12 and a half.
12 and a half acres. So it's a big site. What's cleared, the big open space right now is only about 5 or 6.
Less than half of that.
So there's a lot of wooded tree areas and hillside that's part of that 12 acres. So not by no means is the entire site developable. All right, this is a closer up of what is there now, which is big green lawn and a baseball field.
And a big hill.
Yeah.
There's trees hide it, hills.
Right, so yeah, this goes up like 30 or more feet,
Yeah.
I guess.
Maybe
That's an old stand, too old.
Maybe softball.
Again, for the record, again, my name is David Galabuzzi, landscape architect and site planner. This is where the school sat. So it's now a nice, beautiful lawn area and the parking area left. So you can see, as Dara said, the ball fields left and the wooded area, Jefferson Woods up here. So most of the site is that wooded area. But there's a pretty decent area that's
I
cleared.
used to live over by
Yeah.
there.
I'll show you, I'm gonna show you 2 site plans on Branford Hills. The couple of things that I think are worthy of note, and you may recall this from our last year's discussion during the planning and zoning meetings. There are certain parameters around which in order to build housing for people who make very little money, you need a lot of state funding resources, subsidies for all intents and purposes to build. In order to get that money, which is very competitive, you need to play by certain rules, right? You need to have certain guidelines. So one of the discussions that came out of that, the only way to get what would equate to tens of millions of dollars to build these buildings, is to make it general occupancy rather than restrict it to elderly disabled. It's a state policy. It's the only way you get the money. If you don't do that, you can't get the money. That's just a rule. That doesn't mean that it can't continue to predominantly serve elderly and disabled and can't be marketed that way. We know there's a great need, and we would expect, by and large, it would continue to be occupied by folks that meet those criteria, but you can't access these resources. So that was one thing. The other thing is we need to add units in order, the other competitive kind of advantage that you can access what would otherwise, we couldn't build this project, is you have to be able to add units. So as you recall, our first proposal at Monteluise here was for 75 units. That was to replace the 50 and add 25. We scaled it back to 70, then we scaled it back to 65, and then that's when we pulled, maybe it's down to 61. 61 was the smallest, but we still had a net add of units. So when we were looking at the Branford Hills school site, we said, could we fit the original 70-ish units just to replace Parkside Village 1? And this is really what you would call like a yield study or a massing study, just to see how a 3-story building, this is just to be super clear, 3-story building would sit on the site with a 50-foot setback and with the parking ratio of 1.5 spaces to every unit. So that's a mix. This just tells us that we can get 70 units, mix of 1s and 2s, with all the parking, and leave like the lion's share of the site untouched. So that is just how, and again, this can look any which way. We can rotate the building, we can, zig it, zag it, we don't know, we haven't attached any architecture to it, detailing, so this is just a study. The second, and honestly, this conversation partly came up because some of the issues of the challenge of this site, the absence of sidewalks and transportation, which, as I think we've said, Jamie can talk to and has been advocating to fix here. But also because if this site became available, that it might have some beneficial municipal uses. And that, again, Jamie could speak to more.
So both sites are going to be all 1 2-bedroom units?
Yes, that's the proposal.
No more than 2 bedrooms per unit?
That's right.
For both sites?
Yep, no matter what, it would be a mix of 1s and 2s.
When you say general occupancy, what does that mean exactly?
It means you're not restricting it to elderly.
So is
It
it
means-
just primarily elderly?
It will be primarily elderly because of the smaller units and because of where the need is, the demographic need. But if a person with a child wanted, a single parent with a child wanted to move in, they would be allowed. We can't restrict family.
Kind of the same parameters you were using before for state funding when you were trying to increase.
Exactly. So-
Dara, I think,
Yep.
like, last time around, we answered the questions I had two concerns with, and I heard you, again, talk about the state end of it.